The rain hammered against the windshield of the ambulance like thousands of tiny fists demanding attention. Emily Carter gripped the handle above her seat as her partner, Jake Morrison, navigated through the flooded streets of Lower Manhattan with practiced precision. The wipers worked furiously, but they could barely keep up with the deluge that had transformed the city into a dark, glistening maze. Dispatch said multi-vehicle collision, possible entrapment, Jake called out over the roar of the siren, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Near the old industrial area by the Hudson. Not a great neighborhood, especially on a night like this. Emily nodded, already running through protocols in her mind. At 28, she'd been a paramedic for 6 years. And nights like these, when the weather turned violent and the city seemed to hold its breath, were when her skills mattered most. She'd chosen this profession after watching her mother, a nurse, dedicate her life to helping others before passing away when Emily was just 10 years old. That loss had carved out a hollow space in her heart that she'd spent nearly 2 decades trying to fill by saving as many lives as she could. How many vehicles? Emily asked, checking their medical supplies one more time. Everything had to be perfect. Every second counted. At least 3 confirmed. Fire department's en route, but we're closer. Jake glanced at her, his weathered face creased with concern. You good? Always, Emily replied, though her stomach tightened with the familiar pre-call anxiety that never quite went away. Some paramedics lost that feeling after years on the job. Emily never had, and she considered it a gift. It kept her sharp, kept her caring about each person she treated as if they were family. The ambulance turned onto a desolate stretch of road lined with abandoned warehouses and chain-link fences. Through the rain-streaked windows, Emily could see the chaotic scene ahead. Twisted metal, shattered glass reflecting the emergency lights, and several vehicles scattered across the asphalt like broken toys. A sedan had mounted the median, its front end crumpled. A delivery truck sat sideways, blocking 2 lanes. And there, about 50 feet from the main collision, a sleek black Mercedes had somehow ended up against a concrete barrier, smoke billowing from under its hood. That one doesn't look stable, Jake muttered as they pulled up to the scene. Engines compromised. Emily was already out of the ambulance before it came to a complete stop, her boots splashing in the pooling water. The rain immediately soaked through her uniform, cold and insistent, but she barely noticed. 2 police officers were attempting to direct traffic, their reflective vests gleaming in the storm. A fire truck's siren wailed in the distance. Still several minutes away. We've got injured in the sedan, one officer shouted, pointing. Driver's conscious but trapped, and there's someone in that Mercedes, but we can't get the door open. It's jammed from the impact. Emily's trained eyes swept the scene, categorizing, prioritizing. The sedan driver was conscious. That was good. But the Mercedes, with its billowing smoke and twisted frame, sent alarm bells ringing through her mind. Smoke meant heat. Heat meant potential fire. And potential fire meant time was running out. I'll take the sedan, Jake called out, already moving with the medical kit. Check the Mercedes, but be careful. She was already running toward the luxury vehicle, her medical bag bouncing against her hip. As she approached, she could see through the spider-webbed windshield that someone was slumped over the steering wheel. The hood was crumpled, pressed upward at an unnatural angle, and wisps of smoke, definitely smoke, not just steam, were escaping from the edges. Sir, can you hear me? Emily shouted, trying the driver's door. Jammed solid. She ran to the passenger side, her heart pounding. The rain had plastered her dark hair to her face, and she impatiently pushed it back. The passenger door was equally unresponsive, the frame bent from the collision. Through the window she could see him more clearly now. A man in an expensive suit, probably late 30s, dark hair, his face partially obscured by the deflated airbag. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. He wasn't moving. Sir, I'm a paramedic. I need you to respond if you can hear me. Emily pounded on the window, searching for any sign of consciousness. Nothing. His chest was rising and falling, breathing, that was crucial, but he was completely unresponsive. The smoke was getting thicker. Emily's mind raced through her options. The fire department wasn't here yet. The police officers were busy with the other victims. Jake was occupied. The jaws of life, the hydraulic rescue tools they needed to safely open the crushed door, were still minutes away, and this car could go up in flames at any moment. Officer! She called out to the nearest policeman. I need a baton or something to break the window. Now. The young officer hesitated, looking at the smoking vehicle with obvious concern. Ma'am, Maybe we should wait for fire and rescue. We don't have time. Emily's voice cut through the rain with authority born from 6 years of emergency medicine. That man will suffocate from smoke inhalation before he has a chance to worry about anything else. I need that window broken. Now. The officer handed her his tactical baton, and Emily didn't hesitate. She struck the rear passenger window at its corner, the weakest point, and the safety glass fractured into thousands of pebbled pieces. She cleared the opening quickly, ignoring the sharp edges that caught at her gloves, and climbed through into the back seat. The interior of the Mercedes reeked of deployed airbag powder, gasoline, and something burning. The smoke was thicker inside, stinging her eyes and throat. Emily pulled her flashlight from her belt and assessed the situation with practiced efficiency. The man was trapped by the crushed dashboard, which had compressed inward during the collision. His legs were pinned, but not in a way that suggested immediate vascular compromise. The real danger was the smoke, the potential fire, and the head injury that had left him unconscious. "Sir, my name is Emily. I'm a paramedic and I'm going to get you out of here," she said, even though he couldn't hear her. Talking to patients, conscious or not, was something she'd learned from her mother. It kept her focused, kept her human in situations that threatened to overwhelm. She reached forward to check his pulse at the neck. Strong and steady. Good. His airway was clear, breathing regular despite the smoke. But they needed to move, and fast. Emily assessed the dashboard compression. She couldn't free him without proper equipment, but she could potentially release the seat, slide it back, and create enough space to extract him. Her fingers found the seat adjustment lever, and she threw her weight into pulling it. Nothing. Jammed. The smoke was definitely worse now, and Emily could see a faint orange glow beginning to emanate from under the hood. Her training screamed at her to evacuate, to save herself, to wait for proper equipment. But her heart, that part of her that had driven her into this profession, refused to leave this man to face fire alone. "Come on," she muttered, trying the lever again, this time from a different angle. Something gave way with a metallic groan, and suddenly the seat lurched backward several inches. It was enough. "Officer," Emily shouted through the broken window. "I need help. We need to pull him out now." The same young policeman appeared at the window, his face pale but determined. Together they worked to extract the unconscious man from the wreckage. Emily supported his head and neck, acutely aware that without proper spinal immobilization, she was taking a calculated risk. But the alternative, leaving him in a vehicle that was moments away from becoming an inferno, wasn't an option she could accept. The man was heavy, well-built, and completely dead weight in their arms. Emily's muscles screamed as they maneuvered him through the tight space between the crushed dashboard and the steering wheel. The officer pulled while Emily pushed, and inch by agonizing inch, they freed him from the vehicle, just as they dragged him clear of the Mercedes. Laying him on the wet pavement about 20 feet away, the smoke suddenly turned black and thick. Flames licked out from under the hood, bright and hungry in the darkness. "Get back, everyone back!" someone shouted, and Emily heard the sound of fire extinguishers being deployed as the first firefighters finally arrived on scene. But Emily's focus was entirely on her patient. She immediately began her assessment, checking his airway, breathing, and circulation. His pulse remained strong, no obvious spinal deformity, though she quickly signaled for a cervical collar from Jake, who had appeared beside her with their equipment. Unresponsive male, approximately late 30s, head trauma, unknown duration of unconsciousness, possible smoke inhalation, lower extremity entrapment. Emily rattled off the information as Jake helped her secure the collar and prepare to move him onto a backboard. "Vitals are stable, but we need to transport immediately." As they worked, Emily became aware of the organized chaos around them. The fire department had contained the flames from the Mercedes. Other paramedics had arrived and were treating the victims from the sedan and truck. Police were establishing a perimeter and beginning their investigation. And something else. Several expensive-looking black SUVs had arrived on scene, parking in a tight formation at the edge of the police perimeter. Men in dark suits emerged, their faces hard and watchful, speaking urgently into phones and radios. Emily didn't have time to wonder about them. She and Jake had successfully transferred their patient onto the backboard and were preparing to move him to the ambulance when it happened. The man's eyes suddenly snapped open. They were startlingly clear despite the head trauma. Gray, intense, intelligent. They focused on Emily with an awareness that seemed impossible given his condition just moments before. His hand shot out with surprising speed, gripping Emily's wrist with desperate strength. She froze, caught by the intensity of his gaze. His lips moved and she had to lean close to hear the words over the chaos around them. You. His voice was rough, damaged by smoke and trauma, but filled with an emotion Emily couldn't identify. Recognition, shock, fear. You have her eyes. Emily's breath caught. Sir, please don't try to speak. You've been in a serious accident. But he wasn't finished. His grip on her wrist tightened almost painfully, and his next words came out in a whisper that somehow cut through every other sound. Sarah sent you, didn't she? The name hit Emily like a physical blow. Sarah, her mother's name. The mother who had been gone for 18 years, whose memory Emily carried like a treasured photograph that had faded with time, but never disappeared. What did you say? Emily breathed, her professional composure cracking. How do you know that name? But the man's eyes were already rolling back, his grip loosening as consciousness fled again. Jake was there, helping Emily check his vitals, stabilizing him for transport. Everything proceeded with the mechanical efficiency of years of training, but Emily's mind was reeling. How could this stranger know her mother's name? How could he possibly see a resemblance to a woman who had passed away nearly 2 decades ago? What did he mean by saying Sarah had sent her? We need to move. Now. Jake's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. His vitals are dropping. They loaded the patient into the ambulance and Emily worked on autopilot during the transport to Mount Sinai Hospital, starting an IV line, monitoring oxygen saturation, checking and rechecking his neurological responses. Every action was correct, precise, professional, but her hands trembled slightly as she worked, and her mind kept returning to those words. Sarah sent you, didn't she? At the hospital, they transferred the patient to the emergency department team. Emily gave her report to the attending physician, a thorough recitation of everything that had happened from the moment they arrived on scene, but she left out one detail, the whispered words that had shaken her to her core. As the trauma team wheeled the patient away toward imaging, Emily caught a glimpse of the men in suits who had arrived at the accident scene. They were here too, filling the waiting room with a presence that seemed to make everyone else instinctively step back. They spoke in low voices with hospital security and kept their attention fixed on the doors through which the patient had disappeared. Who is he? Emily asked Jake quietly as they cleaned and restocked their ambulance for the next call. Jake shrugged, but his expression was troubled. Did you see those guys? That's not normal family waiting for news. He trailed off, seeming reluctant to finish the thought. That's what? Emily pressed. That's the kind of security you see around people who need protection, Jake said carefully. Important people, or dangerous people, maybe both. Before Emily could respond, one of the hospital administrators approached them, a thin woman with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested this wasn't a social call. Ms. Carter, I'm Linda Hughes, hospital administration. Could you come with me for a moment? There are some people who'd like to speak with you about the patient you brought in from the accident. Emily exchanged a glance with Jake, who gave her a subtle nod of encouragement. She followed Ms. Hughes through the hospital corridors to a small conference room. Inside, 2 men waited for her. The first was one of the suited men from the accident scene, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that assessed Emily with uncomfortable intensity. The second was older, wearing a more casual but still expensive outfit, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen more of life than most people would want to. Ms. Carter, the first man said, his voice smooth and professional. My name is Marcus Webb. The man you saved tonight is Adrian Blackwell. He's my employer and I wanted to personally thank you for your extraordinary courage. The name meant nothing to Emily, but the way Marcus said it, with a weight that suggested she should recognize it, made her uneasy. I was doing my job, Emily said carefully. Any paramedic would have done the same. No, the older man spoke for the first time, his voice gravelly. Most wouldn't have gone into that vehicle. Most would have waited for the fire department. You saved Adrian's life, and that's not something we take lightly. There was something in the way he said we that made Emily's skin prickle with warning. This wasn't just gratitude. This was something else, something that felt like obligation and debt and things Emily wanted no part of. Is he going to be okay? Emily asked, deflecting from the uncomfortable gratitude. The head injury looks significant. The doctors are optimistic, Marcus replied, thanks to your quick action. But that's actually what we wanted to discuss with you. What Mr. Blackwell said to you before he lost consciousness. Did he say anything? Emily's heart rate spiked. The question seemed casual, But there was nothing casual about the intensity in Marcus's eyes. They were waiting for her answer, with an anticipation that felt dangerous. She made a split-second decision to lie. He was disoriented from the injury. I couldn't make out anything coherent. Why? Is there something I should know? Marcus studied her for a long moment, and Emily had the distinct impression he didn't entirely believe her. But finally, he nodded slowly. No, nothing you need to concern yourself with. We just wanted to ensure he hadn't said anything that might help the doctors with his treatment. I gave a complete report to the attending physician, Emily said. Everything medically relevant. Of course. Marcus reached into his jacket. Emily tensed instinctively and pulled out a business card. If you think of anything else, or if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call. Mr. Blackwell will want to thank you properly once he's recovered. Emily took the card reluctantly. It was heavy stock, expensive, with just a name and phone number embossed in black. No company, no title, nothing to indicate what Marcus Webb actually did for Adrian Blackwell. That's not necessary, Emily said. Really, I was just doing my job. Nevertheless, the older man said, standing and moving toward the door, you'll be hearing from us. Adrian always repays his debts. The way he said it wasn't comforting. It sounded like a promise or a threat. After they left, Emily stood alone in the conference room, staring at the business card in her hand. Her shift was over, and exhaustion was finally catching up with her, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. Adrian Blackwell. The name meant nothing to her, but clearly it meant something to a lot of other people. The suited men with their careful questions and veiled warnings, the way hospital administration had deferred to them, the sense that she'd stumbled into something far more complicated than a simple traffic accident. And underneath it all, echoing through her thoughts like a ghost, you have her eyes. Sarah sent you, didn't she? Emily pulled out her phone and did what she probably should have done hours ago. She opened a search browser and typed, Adrian Blackwell, New York. The results loaded, and Emily's blood turned cold. Adrian Blackwell, 38, prominent businessman and alleged organized crime figure, suspected head of the Blackwell Organization, one of New York's most powerful criminal enterprises. Multiple investigations, no convictions. Known for philanthropic work in the city, while simultaneously being linked to various illegal activities that law enforcement had never quite been able to prove. The face in the photos matched the man she'd pulled from the burning vehicle. The same intense eyes, the same strong features, though in these images he was conscious, composed, radiating the kind of confidence that came from power. Emily had saved the life of a mafia boss. The realization should have terrified her, and part of her was afraid of what it meant, afraid of the men in suits and their talk of debts and gratitude, afraid of being pulled into a world she wanted nothing to do with. But underneath the fear was something else, a burning curiosity about those whispered words, about how a man she'd never met could possibly know her mother's name, about what connection could exist between a paramedic's daughter and one of the most dangerous men in New York City. Emily pocketed the business card in her phone, gathered her things and headed out of the hospital into the early morning light. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming. But as she walked to the subway station, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just become infinitely more complicated. And in a hospital room 3 floors above, Adrian Blackwell opened his eyes and spoke a single word to the concerned men gathered around his bed. Find her. The rescue was over. But Emily's story with Adrian Blackwell was just beginning. The fluorescent lights of Mount Sinai Hospital's emergency department had never felt quite so harsh. Emily moved through her shift with mechanical precision, checking vitals, updating charts, comforting frightened patients and their families. On the surface, everything appeared normal. But beneath that professional exterior, her mind kept circling back to 3 nights ago, to the burning car, the whispered words, and the name that had haunted her entire life, Sarah. Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted an IV drip for an elderly patient with pneumonia. She'd barely slept since that stormy night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian Blackwell's face, heard his smoke-damaged voice saying words that should have been impossible. You have her eyes. Sarah sent you, didn't she? How could he know her mother? Sarah Carter had been a nurse, yes, but she'd worked in a small community clinic in Brooklyn, not in whatever world a man like Adrian Blackwell inhabited. She'd been kind, dedicated, and utterly ordinary, or so Emily had always believed. Now that certainty felt as unstable as the ground during an earthquake. Emily? Jake's voice cut through her thoughts. He stood in the doorway of the supply room where she'd been mindlessly reorganizing bandages for the past 10 minutes. "You okay? You've been off since that accident." Emily forced a smile. "Just tired. Long week." Jake didn't look convinced, but he was kind enough not to push. "Well, there's someone here to see you. Says it's important. He's waiting in the consultation room." Emily's stomach dropped. She knew, with a certainty that bordered on premonition, exactly who was waiting for her. Did he give a name? Marcus something? Looks like he walked out of a movie about Wall Street. Jake's expression was concerned. If this is about that guy from the accident, the one you saved, you don't have to talk to anyone. You did your job. That's it." But it wasn't just her job anymore, was it? The moment Adrian Blackwell had whispered her mother's name, everything had changed. "It's fine," Emily said, though her heart was racing. Probably just follow up about the incident report. She found Marcus Webb exactly where Jake had said, sitting in one of the small consultation rooms the hospital used for delivering difficult news to families. He stood when she entered, his tailored suit immaculate, his presence somehow making the modest room feel even smaller. "Ms. Carter, thank you for seeing me." His voice was polite, professional, but there was something in his eyes that suggested this wasn't a social call. "I'm in the middle of my shift," Emily said, keeping the door open deliberately. "Whatever this is, it needs to be quick." Marcus nodded, seeming to appreciate her directness. He reached into his jacket, more slowly this time, as if aware of how the gesture had made her tense during their first meeting, and withdrew a thick manila envelope. "Mr. Blackwell wanted me to deliver this personally. It's a small token of his gratitude for saving his life." Emily stared at the envelope without taking it. "I told you before I was doing my job. I don't need thanks, and I definitely don't need payment." "This isn't payment," Marcus said carefully. "Consider it acknowledgement of a debt. Mr. Blackwell takes such things very seriously. Then tell Mr. Blackwell the debt is paid by him recovering fully. That's all the acknowledgement I need." Emily turned to leave, but Marcus's next words stopped her cold. "He knows about your mother, Emily." She spun back around, her professional composure cracking. "What did you say?" Marcus's expression softened slightly, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. "Sarah Carter, your mother. Mr. Blackwell knew her, a long time ago. He'd very much like to speak with you about that when you're ready." Emily's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "My mother passed away 18 years ago. She was a nurse who worked in a community clinic in Brooklyn. There's no way she could have known someone like Adrian Blackwell. People's lives are often more complicated than we realize," Marcus said gently, "especially the lives of those we love. Mr. Blackwell isn't trying to disturb your mother's memory. He simply thinks you deserve to know certain things, things that Sarah would have wanted you to know. And why should I believe anything he says?" Emily's voice rose slightly, drawing a concerned glance from a passing nurse. She lowered it, stepping closer to Marcus. "He's a criminal. I looked him up. Everyone knows what he is, even if no one can prove it. He's many things," Marcus acknowledged, surprising her with his honesty. "But he's not a liar, not about things that matter. And your mother, she mattered to him." The envelope sat on the table between them like a challenge. Emily looked at it, then back at Marcus. "What's in there?" $50,000. Again, not payment, just an acknowledgement. "You risked your life to save his. That means something in his world. I don't want his money." Emily's voice was firm, final. "And I don't want anything to do with his world. Please tell Mr. Blackwell that I wish him a full recovery, but I'd appreciate it if this was the last contact we have." She left the room without looking back, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Behind her, Marcus said nothing, but she felt his gaze follow her down the hallway. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Emily threw herself into her work, grateful for the steady stream of patients that kept her mind occupied. But as she changed out of her scrubs in the locker room at the end of her shift, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The offer stands. And the conversation about Sarah. Whenever you're ready. You deserve the truth. M.W." Emily stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. But the words lingered in her mind as she made her way home to her modest one-bedroom apartment in Queens. The next 2 days were blissfully quiet. No mysterious visitors, no cryptic messages, nothing to suggest that her life had been permanently altered by one rescue on one stormy night. Emily almost convinced herself that it was over, that Adrian Blackwell had accepted her refusal and moved on with his life. She should have known better. It was evening when Emily arrived home from a grocery run, her arms laden with bags. The October air had turned crisp, and she was looking forward to a quiet night with takeout and a mindless television show. She juggled the bags while digging for her keys, finally getting the door open and stumbling into her apartment. She knew immediately that something was wrong. Nothing was obviously disturbed. No drawers hanging open, no cushions displaced, no signs of forced entry. But Emily had lived alone for years, and she knew her space with the intimacy of long familiarity. The air felt different, recently disturbed, as if someone had just left. A faint scent that didn't belong, something expensive and masculine. Her medical training kicked in immediately, flooding her system with adrenaline while keeping her mind clear. She set down the groceries slowly, quietly, and pulled out her phone, ready to call 911. But as she moved through the apartment, checking each room with her heart in her throat, she found no one. What she did find made her blood run cold. On her kitchen counter sat the manila envelope Marcus had tried to give her at the hospital. Beside it was a small business card with a handwritten note. "Please reconsider. You're not safe. M.W." Someone had been in her home, had gotten past her locks, had invaded her private space, had left these items as a message that nowhere was truly secure. Emily's hand shook as she grabbed her phone and dialed the number from Marcus's previous text. He answered on the first ring. "Ms. Carter, someone broke into my apartment." Emily's voice was steady, but fury burned beneath each word. "Was it you? Was this supposed to convince me to accept his gratitude? Because congratulations, all you've done is convince me to file a police report." "Emily, please listen." "No, you listen. I don't care who Adrian Blackwell is or what he thinks he owes me. I don't care what connection he claims to have had with my mother. Breaking into my home, invading my privacy, trying to intimidate me, that's not gratitude. That's a threat. It wasn't us." Marcus's voice was sharp now, all professional courtesy gone. "We didn't break into your apartment, but someone did, and that's exactly the problem. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Emily froze, her anger momentarily displaced by confusion. "What are you talking about? When you saved Adrian's life, you were seen by a lot of people. You made the news, local coverage of the accident. Your name, your face, your profession, all public record now. And there are people who would very much like to harm Adrian, people who might see you as leverage." "That's insane," Emily said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was thinking of the men in suits at the hospital, the way they'd watched everything with predatory attention. She was thinking of the search results she'd found about Adrian Blackwell, the allegations, the investigations, the carefully worded news articles about rivalries and territory disputes in New York's underworld. "Is it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Then explain how someone got into your apartment without forcing the locks. Explain the feeling you have right now that someone's been going through your things, even if you can't prove it." Emily looked around her apartment with fresh eyes. The slightly open drawer in her bedroom dresser, had she left it that way? The subtle shift in how her mail was stacked on the entry table? The sense that her laptop had been moved fractionally on her desk? "What do you want from me?" Emily asked, sinking onto her couch. "Mr. Blackwell would like to meet with you properly this time. He wants to explain about your mother, and he wants to ensure your safety, that's all. My safety wasn't in question until I pulled him out of that car." "Perhaps," Marcus acknowledged, "but it is now. And Adrian, Mr. Blackwell, he takes his responsibilities seriously, especially when it comes to people who've helped him." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the walls of her simple, quiet life closing in. She'd spent years building a career based on helping people, on being the calm presence in other people's chaos. Now, somehow, she'd become the chaos. "One meeting," she finally said. "He can explain about my mother. Then I want nothing more to do with any of this. And tell him that if anyone comes near my apartment again, any of his people, I will file a police report regardless of the consequences." "Understood. Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. I'll send a car to pick you up from the hospital after your shift." "No," Emily said firmly. "Public place. I'll choose the location and text it to you, and I come and leave on my own." There was a pause, then what might have been approval in Marcus's voice. "As you wish. Until tomorrow, Ms. Carter, and Emily, lock your door, all the locks, and maybe consider staying somewhere else tonight." The call ended, leaving Emily alone in her violated apartment. She did check all the locks, then added the chain for good measure. But she didn't leave, partly because she had nowhere to go, but mostly because Emily Carter didn't run from things. She'd learned that from her mother: face your problems head on with compassion when possible, but with steel when necessary. She made herself dinner, though she barely tasted it. She tried to watch television but couldn't focus. Finally, she pulled out the one photograph she had of her mother, a faded image of Sarah Carter in her nurse's uniform, smiling at the camera with tired but genuine joy. Emily had been 7 when the photo was taken, just 3 years before her mother passed away from an illness that had come on suddenly and taken her too quickly. "What did you do, Mom?" Emily whispered to the photograph. "What connection did you have to a man like Adrian Blackwell? And why didn't you tell me?" The photograph, of course, offered no answers. But as Emily stared at her mother's face, at the eyes that apparently looked just like her own, she made a decision. She would meet with Adrian Blackwell. She would hear what he had to say about Sarah, and then she would walk away from this entire situation with whatever truth she could carry. She had no way of knowing that walking away would prove impossible. The next evening, Emily chose a coffee shop in Midtown, busy, public, with lots of witnesses and security cameras. She arrived 15 minutes early, claiming a table near the window where she could watch the door. She'd dressed carefully in jeans and a simple sweater, wanting to look neither too casual nor too formal. This wasn't a date. This wasn't even really a voluntary meeting. This was her getting answers about her mother, nothing more. Adrian Blackwell arrived exactly at 7. Emily recognized him immediately, though he looked dramatically different from the last time she'd seen him. The man who'd been unconscious and bleeding in the wreckage now moved with fluid confidence, his tall frame clothed in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than Emily's monthly rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and the only evidence of the accident was a fading scar on his forehead, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Their eyes met across the crowded coffee shop, and Emily felt the same jolt of recognition she'd experienced during those brief seconds when he'd been conscious in the street. His gray eyes were intelligent, assessing, and held something she couldn't quite name. Not threat exactly, more like intensity, focus, as if when Adrian Blackwell looked at you, he truly saw you. He approached the table alone, though Emily had spotted Marcus waiting near the entrance, close enough to respond but far enough to provide the illusion of privacy. "Miss Carter." Adrian's voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of the rough quality it had held after the accident. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." "I didn't agree for you," Emily said bluntly. "I agreed because you apparently have information about my mother, and I deserve to know what that is." Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Direct. I appreciate that. May I sit?" Emily nodded, and Adrian settled into the chair across from her with the ease of someone comfortable in any environment. Up close, she could see more signs of the accident. A healing cut near his temple, the careful way he moved his left shoulder as if it still caused him discomfort. "How are you recovering?" Emily asked, her medical training overriding her wariness for a moment. "Well, thanks to you." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "The doctor said another minute or 2 in that vehicle, and the smoke inhalation alone could have caused serious complications. You saved my life, Emily. May I call you Emily?" "You already have been, apparently," Emily said, thinking of Marcus's messages. "And you're welcome. But I need you to understand something. I would have done the same for anyone. It's my job. It doesn't make me special, and it doesn't mean I want any involvement in whatever it is you do." "Understood." Adrian leaned back slightly, his hands visible on the table, a gesture of openness that Emily suspected was calculated. "But it does make you someone I owe a debt to. In my world, such debts are taken seriously. I don't want your money. I know. Marcus told me you refused, which frankly makes you either remarkably principled or remarkably foolish." He said it without judgment, simply as observation. "Most people would have taken the money and disappeared. The fact that you didn't, that you're here instead demanding answers, tells me something about your character. It tells me you're your mother's daughter." Emily's composure cracked. "Tell me about her. Tell me how you knew Sarah Carter and tell me why you said she sent me." Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant, as if looking into a past only he could see. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight of old grief. "I met your mother 20 years ago. I was 18, arrogant, convinced I was invincible. I'd just taken over certain responsibilities from my father, and I thought I knew everything." He paused, a bitter smile touching his lips. "I was wrong. I made enemies quickly, and one night, those enemies caught up with me. I was left for them in an alley, bleeding, convinced I wasn't going to see morning." Emily found herself leaning forward despite her intention to remain detached. "Your mother found me," Adrian continued. She was leaving her shift at a clinic nearby, the same clinic you mentioned. She could have walked past. Should have, probably. But she didn't. She stopped, assessed my injuries, and made a decision that probably saved my life. She got me stabilized enough to transport, and she stayed with me. Not just that night, but for days afterward. Where? Emily asked. Where were you? Somewhere safe. Your mother had connections through the clinic. People who could provide medical care without asking the questions that hospitals would have asked. She treated my injuries personally, refusing any payment, refusing any acknowledgement. She said she'd taken an oath to help people, and that didn't come with conditions based on who they were or what they'd done. Emily's throat tightened. That sounded exactly like her mother, the woman who'd brought homeless people into their small apartment to feed them, who'd volunteered at shelters on her days off, who'd taught Emily that every life had value. When I recovered, Adrian said quietly, I tried to repay her, tried to give her money, protection, anything she might need. She refused it all, said the only payment she wanted was for me to think carefully about the path I was choosing. Said I was young enough to make different choices. He smiled sadly. She was right, though I was too stubborn to listen at the time. Did you see her again? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A few times, over the next couple of years. Always briefly. Always with her checking to make sure I was, well, not living the life she'd hoped I would, but at least living. And then she disappeared. I tried to find her, to make sure she was safe, but it was as if she'd vanished. I didn't discover what had happened, that she'd gotten sick, that she'd passed away until years later. Adrian's eyes met Emily's, and she saw genuine pain there. I never got to thank her properly, never got to tell her that even though I didn't take her advice about changing my path, she'd given me something precious. The understanding that there could be goodness in the world, even for someone like me. When I saw you in that street, pulling me from that car, risking yourself without hesitation, for a moment, I genuinely thought I'd passed on, and Sarah had come to collect me. Tears pricked at Emily's eyes. She blinked them back angrily. You said I had her eyes. You do. The same color, the same expression. Like you're seeing not just what a person is, but what they could be. Sarah looked at me that way. Even when I was just a criminal bleeding in an alley, she saw potential for something better. Adrian's voice roughened. And when I said she'd sent you, I was delirious from the injury, but part of me genuinely believed it. Believed that somehow, even from beyond, Sarah had sent her daughter to save me, to give me another chance I probably don't deserve. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, frustrated by her own emotion. This man, this criminal, had known her mother in ways Emily never had seen sides of Sarah that her young daughter couldn't have understood. Why didn't she tell me? Emily asked. Why didn't she ever mention you, or that night, or any of it? Because she was protecting you, Adrian said gently. Your mother understood the world I inhabited. She knew that any connection to me, even a historical one, could be dangerous. So she kept that part of her life separate, kept you safe from it. Until I saved you, Emily said bitterly. Until I ruined all that protection by pulling you out of that car. Until you honored her legacy by being exactly the kind of person she raised you to be, Adrian corrected. Emily, what you did that night, it wasn't a mistake. It was proof that Sarah's compassion lives on, that her belief in the value of every life, regardless of who they are, still matters. Pretty words, Emily said, but without much heat. Doesn't change the fact that someone broke into my apartment. That I'm apparently not safe anymore because I did what any decent person would do. Adrian's expression hardened. That's being handled. I've had my best people investigating who violated your home. It won't happen again. How can you promise that? Because anyone who wants to get to you will have to go through me first, Adrian said, and there was steel in his voice now. A glimpse of the dangerous man beneath the cultured exterior. I protect what's mine, Emily. And whether you like it or not, you're under my protection now. Not because I want to control you or involve you in my world, but because I owe Sarah Carter a debt I never got to repay. Keeping her daughter safe, that's how I repay it. I don't want to be protected by a criminal, Emily said. But the words lacked conviction. She was thinking of her violated apartment, of the fear she'd felt knowing someone had been in her private space. She was thinking of the world Adrian represented, a world where people apparently kept track of paramedics who saved the wrong person's life. I know, Adrian said softly, but unfortunately, what you want and what's necessary aren't always the same thing. Trust me, I learned that lesson from your mother 20 years ago. They sat in silence for a moment, the busy coffee shop humming with life around them, while they occupied their own small island of complicated truth. Finally, Emily spoke. I don't want your money. I don't want to be involved in whatever you do, but I do want the truth. If there's more about my mother, about who she really was, about her life before I was old enough to remember clearly, I want to know it. I can give you that, Adrian agreed. And in return, I ask only that you let me ensure your safety. Not control, not obligation, just protection. Let Marcus assign some discreet security. Let me know if anything feels wrong or dangerous. Give me the chance to make sure that saving my life doesn't become the worst decision you ever made. It was a reasonable request, Emily knew. More than reasonable, given the circumstances. But accepting it felt like crossing a line, like acknowledging that her life had fundamentally changed in ways she couldn't undo. 1 week, she finally said. We'll try it for 1 week. After that, we reassess. And if I decide I want out, if I decide that knowing about my mother isn't worth whatever complications come with it, you let me walk away. No questions, no debt, no protection. We go back to being strangers. Adrian extended his hand across the table. 1 week. You have my word. Emily hesitated, then shook his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and held perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. When she pulled back, she felt as if she'd just made a deal she didn't fully understand, one that would have consequences she couldn't yet imagine. I should go, Emily said, gathering her things. I have an early shift tomorrow. Marcus will walk you to your car, Adrian said, standing as well. And Emily, thank you for meeting with me, for listening, and for saving my life, even if you didn't know whose life you were saving. Emily nodded and left without looking back. But as she walked to her car with Marcus maintaining a respectful distance behind her, she felt Adrian's gaze following her, and she knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and strangely thrilling, that her simple life had just become infinitely more complicated. Behind her in the coffee shop, Adrian Blackwell watched Emily Carter disappear into the New York night, and made a silent promise to the memory of the woman who'd once saved his life. I'll keep her safe, Sarah, no matter what it costs me. But safety, as both Adrian and Emily would soon discover, was a far more complicated concept than either of them realized. The grocery store was unremarkably ordinary, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the familiar beep of scanners at checkout, soft music playing through speakers. Emily pushed her cart through the produce section, selecting apples and lettuce with the mundane focus of someone whose mind was entirely elsewhere. It had been 4 days since her meeting with Adrian Blackwell. 4 days of hyper-awareness, of checking over her shoulder, of noticing the dark SUV that seemed perpetually parked within view of her apartment building. Marcus's people, she assumed, the discreet security she'd agreed to accept. Emily had returned to her normal routine with determined normalcy. Work shifts at the hospital, morning runs, coffee at her usual cafe. But everything felt different now, colored by a new awareness of danger she couldn't quite define. She was debating between organic and conventional tomatoes when she felt it, that prickling sensation at the back of her neck that signaled something was wrong. Emily had learned to trust that instinct during her years as a paramedic. She looked up slowly, scanning the produce section. Most shoppers were focused on their own selections. But there, near the potatoes, a man in a dark jacket was watching her. Not casually. His gaze was fixed, purposeful, and when their eyes met, he didn't look away with embarrassment. Instead, his expression hardened. Emily's heart rate spiked. She abandoned her cart and walked quickly toward the front of the store, pulling out her phone. She had Marcus's number programmed now, an admission of her new reality that she still resented. Before she could dial, someone grabbed her arm. Ms. Carter. The voice was unfamiliar, male with an accent she couldn't immediately place. You need to come with me. Now. Emily reacted on instinct, using self-defense techniques from hospital safety training. She twisted away from the grip, creating distance, and her voice rang out loud enough to draw attention. Let go of me, I don't know you. Other shoppers turned, alarm spreading across their faces. The man hesitated, clearly not expecting resistance or witnesses. Suddenly Marcus was there, appearing from nowhere with 2 other men in dark suits. The man who'd grabbed Emily released her immediately and backed away. I wouldn't, Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a threat that needed no amplification. The man assessed the situation with cold calculation, then turned and walked rapidly toward the exit. Marcus nodded to one of his companions who followed at a distance, then turned his attention to Emily. "Are you hurt?" His voice was professional, but Emily could see genuine concern in his eyes. "I'm fine," Emily said, though her hands were shaking. "What just happened? Who was that?" "Someone who's going to regret being here," Marcus said grimly. He placed a gentle hand on her back, guiding her toward a different exit. "We need to get you somewhere safe, now." The SUV was waiting with its engine running. The door opened, and Emily found herself being ushered into the back seat where Adrian Blackwell sat waiting, his expression thunderous. "Are you hurt?" His voice was tight, controlled, but Emily could hear the fury beneath it. "I'm fine, shaken, but fine." Emily's voice was steadier than she felt. "What's going on? Who was that man?" "Someone who won't be a problem much longer," Adrian said. "I'm taking you somewhere secure. We need to talk about your situation and we can't do it in the open." "My apartment isn't safe, hasn't been safe since that first night." Adrian's jaw clenched. "I should have insisted on better protection. Should have let me live my normal life," Emily interrupted, anger cutting through her fear. "This is exactly what I didn't want." "I know," Adrian said quietly, "and I'm sorry. But Emily, these people, they see you as leverage against me, and they won't stop with intimidation." The SUV navigated through traffic. Emily watched the familiar streets pass by, feeling pulled further from the life she'd built. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My penthouse in Tribeca. It's the most secure location I have." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "Just for tonight. Let me ensure you're safe. Let me explain the full situation, and then we'll figure out next steps. Together." Emily wanted to argue, wanted to demand he let her out. But the memory of that man's grip on her arm stopped her. Whatever was happening, it was real and dangerous. "Just tonight," she agreed. "And tomorrow we're having a serious conversation about how this ends." Adrian's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a Tribeca building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. It was elegant without being ostentatious. Hardwood floors, tasteful furniture, and unexpected bookshelves filled with well-read volumes. "The guest room is down the hall," Marcus said, appearing with Emily's emergency bag from her apartment. "Everything you need should be there." Emily took the bag numbly. Marcus withdrew, leaving Emily alone with Adrian in the expansive living room. "I know you have questions," Adrian said, gesturing toward a leather couch. "Please sit. Can I get you something to drink?" "Answers," Emily said, but she did sit, suddenly exhausted. Real ones. No more vague warnings. Who was that man? Why did he grab me? And how long is this going to continue? Adrian poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offering one to Emily, who surprised herself by accepting. "The man who approached you works for the Volkov organization," Adrian began. "They're a rival group. We've had tensions for the past year, territory disputes, the usual complications." "There's nothing usual about any of this," Emily said sharply. "No," Adrian agreed. "You need to understand. My organization operates by certain rules. We don't involve civilians. We don't target families. We keep our conflicts contained. The Volkovs don't share those rules. They see any connection as a weapon to be exploited." Emily felt cold. "When I saved your life, when my face appeared in news coverage, they noticed?" "Yes. They started building a profile on you. Where you live, work, your routines. Looking for ways to use you as leverage." Adrian met her eyes directly. "I won't let that happen. Not to you. Not after everything your mother did for me." "This isn't about my mother anymore," Emily said quietly. "This is about you and your world, and conflicts I want no part of." "You're right. It's not fair. If I could make you invisible to these people, I would. But I can't. They know about you now." Emily stood, moving to the windows. "So what happens now? I can't live in your penthouse forever. I have a job, a life, patients who depend on me." "I know." Adrian joined her at the window. "We have options. Increase security, relocation if necessary, or we change the equation entirely. Make it clear that you're not just someone I feel obligated to protect. Make you someone it would be catastrophically unwise to threaten." "How?" "By making you part of my world in a way that's undeniable. By positioning you as someone under my direct protection, with all the implications that carries." Adrian's gray eyes were serious. "In my world, certain relationships carry weight. Family, close associates, people who are clearly under protection. They're off limits, even to the Volkovs. You want me to pretend to be what? Your girlfriend? Emily's voice rose slightly. I'm asking you to let me keep you safe in the only way that will actually work. If they believe that harming you would bring my full attention down on them, they'll back off. It's the language they understand. Emily wanted to refuse, but she'd seen the calculation in that man's eyes at the grocery store. I need time to think, she finally said. Of course. The guest room is yours. Tomorrow we'll talk again. Emily couldn't sleep. Around 2 in the morning, she ventured out and found Adrian in the kitchen with a laptop, wearing casual clothes that made him look less intimidating. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Too much to think about. Emily made tea for both of them. They sat across from each other at the kitchen island. Tell me about the Volkovs, Emily said suddenly. Who they really are. Adrian explained about Viktor Volkov. Smart, ruthless, lacking moral boundaries. About expansion at any cost, not caring who got hurt. Is that supposed to make me feel better about being protected by one crime organization against another? No, Adrian said honestly. It's supposed to help you understand the reality. This isn't about good versus bad. It's about degrees of harm, and which side you'd rather have protecting you. They talked for hours. About Emily's mother. About the choices that defined them both. About the impossible situation they found themselves in. Finally, Emily spoke. If I agree to this, what exactly does that mean? You'd continue your work at the hospital. Your career doesn't change, but you'd have visible security. You'd attend some events with me, be seen in places where our association would be noted. In exchange, you'd be safe, and I'd tell you everything about your mother, every memory, every conversation. Emily studied him in the soft kitchen light, this complicated man who'd remembered her mother for 20 years. 1 month, Emily said finally. We try this for 1 month. I continue my work, I allow the security, I attend events with you. In return, you tell me everything about my mother. At the end of the month, we reassess. If I want out, you let me go with no pressure. Adrian extended his hand. 1 month. You have my word. Emily shook his hand, feeling that her simple life had just become infinitely more complicated. But maybe, just maybe, there was something worth discovering in this strange new reality. That evening, Marcus appeared at the hospital with a garment bag. There's a charity gala tonight at the plaza, he explained. Hospital funding. Mr. Blackwell thought you might attend with him. Emily wanted to refuse, but she thought about what Adrian had said, about making her presence visible, undeniable. Fine, I'll go. The gala was elegant, full of New York's elite and medical professionals. Adrian introduced her to everyone the same way. This is Emily Carter. She saved my life and I'm ensuring nothing happens to her as a result. It was brilliant strategy. By being open about how they'd met, Adrian removed any mystery. Everyone would understand what Emily's connection to him meant. Across the room, Emily noticed a man watching them with cold blue eyes. Viktor Volkov. That's Viktor, Adrian confirmed quietly. He won't cause a scene here, but he's seeing exactly what we wanted him to see. Viktor approached them. Adrian, I see you've recovered from your accident. Thanks to Ms. Carter, Adrian said. Emily, this is Viktor Volkov. Viktor's cold eyes assessed Emily. Remarkable courage. And now you find yourself in Adrian's protection? I find myself grateful for his support after some unfortunate attention, Emily said carefully, showing no fear. Viktor smiled, without warmth. Complications are unfortunate. Perhaps they will resolve themselves soon. Perhaps, Adrian said, his voice carrying a warning. Or perhaps they'll become permanent arrangements. After Viktor left, Adrian guided Emily to the balcony. You handled him perfectly. By standing beside me without flinching, you've changed the situation. You're no longer just a vulnerability. You're a factor he has to calculate around. Good, Emily said, surprising herself, because I'm tired of feeling afraid. If I'm going to be involved in this, I'd rather be involved on my own terms. Adrian studied her with new appreciation. Your mother would be proud of you. They stood overlooking Central Park, and Adrian shared more memories of Sarah Carter. Her wit, her passion for justice, her belief that people weren't defined by their worst moments. She used to say everyone deserved the chance to be better, Adrian remembered. I didn't believe her then. I do now. It's not too late, Emily said, to be someone different. They returned to the gala, and Emily found herself genuinely enjoying the evening. Near the end, an organizer thanked them. Your donation will save lives. Emily felt the weight of those words. Lives saved. That's what she'd devoted her career to. And here was Adrian achieving the same goal through different means. It was complicated, messy, morally ambiguous, and undeniably effective. As they drove back, Emily reflected on how much had changed. She'd gone from wanting nothing to do with Adrian to willingly stepping into his world. "Thank you for tonight," Adrian said. "I know it wasn't easy." "Actually," Emily admitted, "you're more than I initially thought you were. That's not an endorsement of everything you do, but it's an acknowledgement that you're complicated. Like my mother saw." Adrian smiled genuinely. "I'll take complicated as a compliment." Emily returned to the guest room, exhausted but settled. She'd faced Victor without flinching. She'd honored her mother's memory by seeing potential in someone others would dismiss. And she'd begun to understand that crossing the line between her world and Adrian's didn't mean losing herself. The crossing had begun. Where it would lead, neither of them could yet know. The FBI field office in Lower Manhattan was nothing like Emily had imagined. She'd expected something from television, dramatic, imposing, full of urgent activity. Instead, it was mundane, beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and the smell of stale coffee permeating everything. Agent Rachel Torres sat across from Emily in a small interrogation room, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. She was in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled back severely and the kind of composed demeanor that suggested she'd seen everything and been surprised by nothing. "Thank you for coming in, Ms. Carter," Agent Torres said, sliding a folder across the table. "I know this must be confusing." Emily had received the call that morning, a polite but firm request to come to the FBI office to discuss a matter of national importance. She'd told Marcus she had a personal appointment and taken a cab alone, something she hadn't done in 2 weeks. The freedom felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "Confusing is one word for it," Emily said carefully. "Am I in some kind of trouble?" "No, nothing like that." Agent Torres opened the folder, revealing surveillance photos. Images of Emily and Adrian at the charity gala, entering his building, sitting together at a restaurant. "We've been watching Adrian Blackwell for years. We're aware of your association with him." Emily felt her stomach tighten. "I saved his life in a car accident. He's been grateful. That's the extent of our association." "Is it?" Agent Torres's tone wasn't accusatory, just curious. "You've been staying at his penthouse, attending events with him, accepting his protection. Ms. Carter, we know about the incident at the grocery store. We know the Volkovs have been targeting you. Then you understand why I've accepted his help," Emily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not involved in anything illegal. I'm just trying to stay safe." "I believe you," Agent Torres said, surprising her. "In fact, that's why I asked you here." "Emily, may I call you Emily? You're in a unique position. You have access to Adrian Blackwell in a way very few people do, and we think you might be able to help us." Emily's blood ran cold. "Help you how?" Agent Torres leaned forward. "Adrian Blackwell runs one of the most sophisticated criminal organizations on the East Coast. For years we've tried to build a case against him, but he's careful, protected, insulated by layers of legitimate business and loyal associates. But you've gotten close to him in weeks. He trusts you, or at least he's starting to." "You want me to spy on him," Emily said flatly. "We want you to help us prevent harm," Agent Torres corrected. "The Blackwell organization is involved in activities that hurt people, Emily. Not just rival criminals, innocent people. And if we could build a case, if we could actually hold Adrian accountable, we could dismantle an organization that's caused immeasurable damage." Emily thought about the past 2 weeks, about Adrian's careful explanations of his world, about the rules he claimed to follow, about the charity gala and the $500,000 donation to trauma centers, about the way he spoke of her mother with genuine grief and respect. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Agent Torres pulled out a small device. A wire, Emily realized with a sinking feeling. "Wear this during your interactions with Adrian. Record conversations. Document anything you see that might be relevant. You wouldn't have to testify, we just need evidence to build our case. And if I refuse, then you continue your relationship with a dangerous criminal, accept his protection, and become complicit in whatever he does." Agent Torres's voice was gentle but firm. "Emily, I've read about you. You're a paramedic. Someone who's devoted her life to helping others. Is that really who you want to be? Someone who enables a crime boss?" The words hit harder than Emily expected, because Agent Torres was right. Emily had spent her entire career helping people, saving lives, trying to make the world better. How could she reconcile that with accepting protection from someone who, by definition caused harm. I need time to think, Emily said. Of course. But Emily? Agent Torres slid a business card across the table. The Volkovs aren't the only threat you should be worried about. Adrian Blackwell is charming, probably seems protective and even honorable in his own way. But he's still a criminal. And the longer you're in his world, the harder it will be to leave. Think about that. Emily left the FBI office in a daze. She walked for blocks without direction, her mind churning. Everything Agent Torres had said made sense. Emily should want to help bring down a criminal organization. She should want justice. But the idea of betraying Adrian, of wearing a wire, of recording their conversations, of violating the trust that had been slowly building between them, felt fundamentally wrong, not because she approved of what he did, but because of what it would say about her integrity, her word, the promise she'd made. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, everything okay? You've been gone longer than expected? Emily stared at the message. Even now, even when she'd deliberately gone out alone, they were tracking her movements. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt oddly reassuring. She texted back, "Fine, just needed some air. Heading back now." When Emily returned to Adrian's penthouse, she found him in his study reviewing documents on his laptop. He looked up when she entered, and something in her expression made him immediately close the computer. "What's wrong?" Emily had prepared a lie, a story about a difficult patient, about needing space to process. But looking at Adrian's concerned face, she found herself unable to speak anything but truth. "The FBI contacted me. They want me to wear a wire, to help them build a case against you." The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian's expression didn't change. No anger, no betrayal, no fear, just careful assessment. "And what did you tell them?" His voice was neutral, that I needed time to think. Emily moved into the study, sitting in the chair across from his desk. "Adrian, I need you to understand something. Everything in me says I should help them. I'm supposed to be one of the good people. I save lives. I follow rules. I try to make the world better. How can I justify protecting a criminal?" "You can't," Adrian said simply. "If that's how you see me, as just a criminal, just someone who breaks laws and hurts people, then you should absolutely help the FBI. You should wear their wire, gather their evidence, and feel righteous about it." "But," Emily prompted, hearing the unspoken word, "but if you see me as more complicated than that, as someone who operates in a world with impossible choices, who tries to minimize harm, even while causing it, who's attempting to honor a debt to your mother by keeping you safe, then maybe the decision isn't so simple." Adrian stood, moving to the window with his back to her. "Emily, I'm not going to ask you not to help the FBI. I'm not going to threaten you or try to manipulate you. If you believe that cooperating with them is the right thing to do, then do it. I'll accept whatever consequences come from that." "Just like that?" Emily's voice rose with frustration. "You'll just accept it? Let me betray you?" "It's not betrayal if I'm telling you it's okay," Adrian said, turning to face her. "And honestly, part of me thinks you should do it, should help them, because maybe I deserve whatever they'd do to me. Maybe your mother was wrong to save me all those years ago, and you're wrong to accept my protection now." Emily stood, anger flaring. "Don't do that. Don't make yourself the martyr who's accepting justified punishment. If you really believed you deserved it, you'd turn yourself in. You'd cooperate with their investigation voluntarily. But you won't, because you believe what you do serves a purpose. So either defend it or don't, but don't give me this noble resignation." Something sparked in Adrian's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "You're right. You want the truth? Fine. Yes, I run a criminal organization. Yes, we engage in activities that are illegal, but we also provide services that people want, protection that communities need, and order in spaces where the law has failed. The Volkovs, the organizations that would take over if we disappeared, they're worse. They don't care about minimizing harm. They don't donate to hospitals or follow codes about civilians. So you're the lesser evil?" Emily challenged. "I'm an evil that understands there are lines that shouldn't be crossed," Adrian said. "And yes, that makes me better than the alternative, even if it doesn't make me good." Emily moved closer to him. "The FBI agent. She said I'm becoming complicit, that the longer I stay in your world, the harder it will be to leave. She's probably right." "She is right," Adrian agreed quietly. "This is your chance, Emily. Your one clear opportunity to walk away, to help the authorities, to be unambiguously on the right side. If you don't take it now, That opportunity might not come again. And what do you want me to do? Adrian's expression softened. I want you to do whatever lets you sleep at night. Whatever aligns with the person your mother raised you to be. If that means cooperating with the FBI, then I'll face those consequences. But Emily, he paused, seeming to struggle with the words. I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't miss having you here. Miss our conversations. Miss the way you challenge me. Miss feeling like I might actually become someone your mother would have been proud of. Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. This impossible man, this complicated situation, this choice that had no right answer. I need time, she said. Time to think. To figure out what I actually believe versus what I'm supposed to believe. Take all the time you need, Adrian said. The guest room is yours for as long as you want it. No pressure, no expectations. Emily spent the next 3 days in a state of internal warfare. She went to work, treated patients, maintained her normal routine, but every quiet moment was filled with the weight of her decision. She researched the FBI's case against Adrian, reading everything publicly available. The allegations were serious: racketeering, illegal operations, connections to activities that absolutely caused harm. But there were no convictions, no solid evidence, just years of investigation that had gone nowhere. She also paid closer attention to Adrian's actual behavior. The phone calls she could overhear, the meetings that took place in his study, the careful way he conducted business. She saw someone who was exacting, demanding, but also principled in his own way. Someone who turned down opportunities that would have been profitable but would have crossed lines he wasn't willing to cross. On the 4th day, Emily made her decision. She called Agent Torres from a coffee shop somewhere public and anonymous. Agent Torres? It's Emily Carter. I've thought about your offer. And? The agent's voice was carefully neutral. I can't do it. I can't wear a wire. Can't spy on Adrian. Not because I approve of everything he does, but because I gave him my word. Because he's been honest with me when he could have lied, protective when he could have been controlling, and respectful of my choices even when they complicate his life. There was a long pause. Ms. Carter, you're making a mistake. You're choosing a criminal over justice. Maybe, Emily admitted. Or maybe I'm choosing integrity over expediency. I don't know if Adrian Blackwell is a good man. But I know that betraying someone's trust, violating a relationship, becoming something I'm not, that would definitely make me less of a good person. I can't do it. If you change your mind, I won't, Emily said firmly. But Agent Torres, you should know something. Adrian told me it was my choice. Told me he'd accept whatever I decided, even if it meant helping you. He didn't threaten me. Didn't try to manipulate me. Didn't do any of the things you probably expected him to do. Maybe that doesn't change what he is, but it should tell you something about who he is. Emily ended the call and sat for a long moment, staring at her untouched coffee. She'd just made a choice that would define her relationship with Adrian, with law enforcement, with her own sense of right and wrong. There was no taking it back. When she returned to the penthouse that evening, Adrian was in the living room, reading. He looked up when she entered, searching her face for answers to questions he wouldn't ask. I spoke with Agent Torres, Emily said without preamble. I told her no. I'm not going to help the FBI build a case against you. Adrian set down his book slowly. Why? Because you told me the truth about what it would mean. Because you gave me a real choice instead of manipulating me. Because... Emily moved closer, holding his gaze. Because my mother saw something in you worth saving 20 years ago. And I'm starting to see it too. That doesn't mean I approve of everything you do. It doesn't mean I'm comfortable with your world. But it means I'm not going to betray you. Something powerful moved across Adrian's features. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper that Emily wasn't quite ready to name. Thank you, he said quietly. That couldn't have been an easy choice. It wasn't, Emily admitted. And I need you to understand, this doesn't make us partners in crime. I'm still the same person with the same values. I'm just choosing to honor my word over helping authorities who've been investigating you for years without success anyway. Understood. Adrian stood, moving toward her. Emily, I want you to know something. Having you here, having someone challenge me, remind me of better possibilities. It's changed things. Changed me, at least a little. I'm trying to be someone your mother would recognize. Someone worthy of the second chance she gave me and the third chance you're giving me now. Then be that person, Emily said. Not for me, not for my mother's memory, but for yourself. Figure out who you actually want to be and start making choices that align with that. Adrian reached out, and for a moment Emily thought he might embrace her. Instead, he just took her hand, squeezing gently. "I'll try. No promises, but I'll try." That night, Emily lay in the guest room and reflected on her choice. She'd crossed a line today, chosen loyalty over law, trust over justice, personal integrity over civic duty. Agent Torres was probably right that it would make leaving Adrian's world harder. But as Emily drifted toward sleep, she realized she wasn't sure she wanted to leave anymore. Not because she approved of his world, but because she'd found something unexpected in it. Someone who challenged her assumptions, who made her question what justice really meant, who reminded her that people were always more complicated than the labels applied to them. Her mother had seen that in Adrian 20 years ago. Now Emily was seeing it too, and whatever came next, whatever consequences followed from her choice, she would face them with clear eyes and no regrets. In his bedroom down the hall, Adrian stood at the window and looked out at the city he'd spent 2 decades navigating. Emily Carter had just chosen him over the FBI, trust over betrayal, complexity over simplicity. It was a gift he didn't deserve and would spend considerable effort trying to earn. But more than that, she'd challenged him to be better. Not perfect, not suddenly legitimate, but better. And for the first time in 20 years, Adrian found himself actually wanting to try. The worlds had collided, the lines had been crossed, and neither Emily nor Adrian would ever be quite the same again. 6 months had passed since Emily made her choice. 6 months of living between 2 worlds, her days spent saving lives at the hospital, her evenings navigating the complex reality of Adrian's penthouse and the life that came with it. The guest room had become truly hers now, filled with her books, her photographs, her mother's few belongings that she'd retrieved from storage. Adrian had never pressured her to leave, and Emily had stopped pretending she was only there temporarily. This was her life now, complicated, morally ambiguous, but undeniably hers. She was reviewing patient charts during her hospital shift when her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Situation developing. Adrian needs you at the estate. Cars outside." Emily's stomach tightened. In 6 months, she'd learned to read Marcus's messages, and the clipped urgency meant something serious. She found Jake and arranged coverage for the rest of her shift, then headed to the waiting SUV. The estate was a property outside the city that Adrian rarely used. A sprawling house on 10 acres, surrounded by woods and security. Emily had only been there twice before, both times for gatherings that Adrian described as necessary meetings with people who prefer privacy. The drive took 90 minutes. Emily spent it trying to calm her racing thoughts, wondering what could possibly require her presence at a secure location in the middle of the day. Marcus met her at the entrance, his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. "What's going on?" Emily demanded. "Adrian's been injured," Marcus said bluntly. "Not life-threatening, but serious enough. He's asking for you specifically." Emily's medical training kicked in immediately, overriding her personal concern. "What kind of injury? What happened?" "Altercation with the Volkovs. Things got physical. He took a defensive hit. Possible broken ribs, definitely bruised, could be internal concerns." Marcus led her through the house to a bedroom where Adrian sat on the edge of the bed, pressing a towel to his side. "Emily." Relief flooded his face when he saw her. "Thank you for coming." Emily was already moving toward him, her hands gentle but professional as she carefully moved the towel aside. The bruising was extensive, dark purple spreading across his rib cage. She probed carefully, watching his face for signs of severe pain. "You need a hospital," she said firmly. "This could be internal bleeding, fractured ribs that might puncture a lung." "Can't go to a hospital," Adrian said, his voice strained. "Too many questions. Too much attention." "Emily, please, I trust you. Just tell me how bad it is." Emily wanted to argue, wanted to insist on proper imaging and treatment, but she understood the reality of his world. Hospitals meant police reports, investigations, complications that could unravel everything. "I need supplies," she said to Marcus. "A proper medical kit, ice packs, compression bandages, and pain medication. Prescription strength if you have it." Marcus nodded and left. Emily continued her examination, checking for signs of serious internal injury, while part of her mind marveled at how thoroughly her life had changed. 6 months ago, she would never have considered treating someone outside a hospital. Now she was doing exactly that. "Tell me what happened," Emily said as she worked. Adrian winced as she pressed gently against his ribs. "The Volkovs have been pushing boundaries lately. testing how serious our agreements are. Today, they pushed too far. There was a confrontation, words, then physical. It was handled, but not before I took some hits. Handled how? Emily asked, though part of her didn't want to know. No one was seriously hurt, Adrian said, meeting her eyes. I know that matters to you. My people broke it up before it went too far. But Emily, this situation with the Volkovs, it's escalating. They're getting bolder, more willing to risk open conflict. Marcus returned with an impressive medical kit. Emily set to work properly, cleaning and assessing the injury. The ribs were likely cracked, not broken. Painful, but not immediately dangerous. The bruising was severe but localized, suggesting the internal organs weren't compromised. You're lucky, Emily said as she wrapped his ribs with compression bandages. Another few inches and this could have been much worse. You need rest, ice every few hours, and careful monitoring for the next 48 hours. Any difficulty breathing, any sharp pains, any sign of internal bleeding, you tell me immediately. Yes, doctor, Adrian said with a slight smile, though pain shadowed his eyes. I'm not a doctor, I'm a paramedic who shouldn't be treating patients in an estate outside the city, Emily corrected, but her tone was gentle. She prepared an ice pack and positioned it carefully against his side. And you're staying here tonight. I'll monitor you. You don't have to. I do, Emily interrupted firmly. You called me here because you trust me medically. That means you follow my medical advice. Which includes observation. Adrian nodded, settling back against the pillows with a grimace. Marcus had quietly withdrawn, leaving them alone. I'm sorry, Adrian said after a moment. Sorry that my world keeps pulling you into situations like this. You should be at the hospital helping patients who need you, not patching up a crime boss who got into a fight. Don't, Emily said, sitting in the chair beside the bed. Don't apologize for needing help. That's not how this works. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Emily monitored his breathing, his color, the signs that would indicate whether her assessment had been correct. Emily, Adrian said eventually, his voice quieter. There's something I need to tell you. Something about your mother that I haven't shared yet. Emily's attention sharpened. Over the past 6 months, Adrian had shared many memories of Sarah, but she could tell there were still pieces he was holding back. Your mother didn't just save my life that night, Adrian continued. She saved my soul in a way. When she found me in that alley, bleeding and certain I was going to die, I was angry, furious that this was how my life would end, that I'd never have the chance to prove I was more than my father's son, more than the path that had been chosen for me. He paused, adjusting the ice pack with a wince. Sarah looked at me, really looked at me, and she said, You're young, you're hurt, but you're not dead yet, which means you still have choices. That one sentence, it haunted me for years, because she was right. I wasn't dead. I did have choices. I just kept making the wrong ones. Adrian, let me finish, he said gently. When you pulled me from that burning car, when you risked everything to save a stranger, I saw Sarah in you, that same conviction that every life matters, that everyone deserves a chance. And I realized I'd wasted the chance she gave me. I'd spent 20 years becoming exactly what she'd hoped I wouldn't become. Emily reached out, taking his hand carefully to avoid jostling his injuries. You can't change the past, but you can change what you do next. I know, and I've been trying, these past 6 months, restructuring operations, cutting ties with activities that cross lines I'm no longer willing to cross, pushing back against people like the Volkovs who operate without any code. Adrian met her eyes. It's not enough. It's not redemption, but it's something. It's a start, Emily said firmly, and that matters. Emily stayed at the estate that night, monitoring Adrian's condition. His injuries remained stable, painful, but not dangerous. She changed his ice packs, checked his vitals, and made sure he followed her instructions about rest. Around midnight, unable to sleep, Emily found herself in the estate's library. The room was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, comfortable chairs, the smell of old paper and leather bindings. She was browsing the shelves when Marcus appeared in the doorway. Can't sleep? He asked. Worried about internal bleeding, Emily admitted. Probably being overly cautious, but better overly cautious than the alternative. Marcus moved into the room, his usually formal demeanor slightly relaxed. Emily, can I speak frankly? Always. What you've done for Adrian these past 6 months, it's been remarkable. Not just tonight, not just the medical care, but the way you've challenged him, pushed him to be better, reminded him that there are lines worth holding. Marcus's expression was sincere. I've worked for the Blackwell family for 15 years. I've never seen Adrian like this, questioning decisions, considering consequences, actually trying to change. He's doing that himself, Emily protested. I'm just present. You're more than present. You're the reason he wants to change. Marcus hesitated, then continued. But Emily, you should know. The changes he's making, they're creating tensions. Within the organization, with our rivals, with people who benefited from the old way of doing things. The Volkovs see it as weakness. Others see it as opportunity. Adrian's trying to transform something that resists transformation, and that's dangerous. Emily felt cold. Are you saying I'm putting him in danger? I'm saying change always comes with risk, but it's still worth doing. Marcus met her eyes. Just be aware that the path forward won't be easy, for either of you. The next morning, Emily was relieved to find Adrian's condition unchanged. Still painful, but no signs of internal complications. She prepared to return to the city, to her shift at the hospital, to the normal world that felt increasingly distant. Thank you, Adrian said as she gathered her things. For coming, for staying, for taking care of me. That's what I do, Emily said simply. Take care of people who need it. It's more than that, and you know it. Adrian stood carefully, moving toward her. Emily, I need to ask you something. These past 6 months, this arrangement where you live in my home, accept my protection, exist in my world while maintaining your own life. Is it enough? Is it what you want? Emily wasn't sure how to answer. Was it enough? She'd saved countless lives at the hospital, made a real difference in her work. But she'd also found something unexpected in Adrian's world. Purpose beyond her profession. Connection beyond simple companionship. The sense that she was helping someone become better. I don't know what I want anymore, Emily admitted. 6 months ago I had clear answers. Now everything's complicated. Complicated can be good, Adrian said gently. It means you're growing, changing, seeing nuance instead of absolutes. Your mother understood that. Understood that the world wasn't simple, that people weren't easily categorized, that sometimes the right choice wasn't the obvious one. She also understood sacrifice, Emily said. She sacrificed a normal life to help people. Sacrificed safety to save you. Sacrificed probably a lot of things I never knew about. She paused, meeting Adrian's gaze. I'm starting to understand what that means. What it costs to try to make things better in imperfect circumstances. Adrian reached out, cupping her face gently. You don't have to sacrifice anything for me, Emily. Not your career, not your principles, not your sense of self. If this life isn't what you want, that's just it, Emily interrupted. I don't know what I want, but I know I'm not ready to leave. Not yet. Something powerful passed between them. Recognition, understanding, the acknowledgement that whatever was growing between them had become more than obligation or gratitude. 3 months later, Emily stood in the community center that had just opened in one of Brooklyn's underserved neighborhoods. The Sarah Carter Memorial Clinic, funded by the Blackwell Foundation, staffed by volunteer medical professionals, providing free health care to people who couldn't afford it otherwise. Adrian stood beside her, his injuries from months ago fully healed. He'd been quiet during the opening ceremony, letting the medical staff and community leaders speak. But now, as they toured the gleaming new facility, Emily saw genuine pride in his expression. Your mother would have loved this, he said. A clinic where people get help regardless of their ability to pay, where medical care isn't a privilege but a right. This is her legacy. This is your money, Emily pointed out. Money that exists because of choices I've made. Some good, some questionable, some your mother would have disapproved of. But this, Adrian gestured at the clinic, this is something she would have approved of, using resources to help people who need it most. It doesn't erase the past, but it's a step toward a different future. Emily looked around the clinic, seeing parents with their children, elderly people receiving care, teenagers getting treatment they'd previously gone without, lives being saved, health being restored, hope being provided. This matters, she said firmly. Whatever else is true about your organization, about the choices you've made, this matters. These people matter, because you taught me that, Adrian said quietly. You and your mother. The lesson that every life has value, that power should be used to help rather than just to control, that there's always another choice if you're willing to make it. Over the past 9 months, Emily had watched Adrian systematically transform his organization, cutting ties with operations that caused direct harm to civilians, establishing boundaries with rivals through negotiation rather than force, investing profits into community programs, medical facilities, educational resources. It wasn't perfect. He was still involved in activities that existed in legal gray areas, but it was undeniably better, and Emily had been part of that transformation, not as his conscience or his savior, but as his partner in figuring out how to use power more responsibly, challenging his decisions, offering perspectives he wouldn't have considered, reminding him of the person he was trying to become. "I have something for you," Adrian said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "I've been working on this for months." Emily opened it to find legal documents, complex paperwork that took her a moment to understand. Then she saw it. The Sarah Carter Foundation, established with significant funding, dedicated to providing medical care and educational opportunities in underserved communities, and listed as co-director, alongside Adrian, Emily Carter. "I don't understand," Emily said. "You've helped me figure out how to use my resources better. Now I want you to have direct control over some of those resources. The foundation is yours to run, fund clinics like this one, provide scholarships for medical students, support paramedics and first responders, whatever you think will make the most difference. No restrictions, no obligations, just the opportunity to honor your mother's memory by continuing her work on a larger scale." Emily felt tears prick at her eyes. "Adrian, this is incredible, but I can't accept this if it's about guilt or obligation." "It's not," Adrian interrupted gently. "It's about recognizing that you've shown me a better path, and I want to walk it with you. Not because I'm trying to earn redemption or assuage guilt, but because it's the right thing to do. Because your mother was right. I do have choices, and I'm finally making the ones she hoped I would." Emily threw her arms around him, careful of old injuries, grateful for this impossible man who'd somehow become central to her life. "Thank you. For this. For listening. For trying to be better. Thank you," Adrian said, holding her close. "For not giving up on me. For seeing possibilities instead of just condemning certainties. For being exactly who your mother raised you to be." They stood together in the clinic that bore Sarah Carter's name, surrounded by the concrete evidence that change was possible, that people could grow, that choices mattered. That evening, back at the penthouse, Emily and Adrian sat on the balcony overlooking the city. 9 months since she'd pulled him from a burning car. 9 months since her simple life had become impossibly complicated. "Do you regret it?" Adrian asked quietly. "Saving me that night? Everything that's happened since?" Emily considered the question seriously. She thought about the fear, the danger, the impossible choices, but she also thought about the clinic, the lives being saved, the person Adrian was becoming, the purpose she'd found beyond her work at the hospital. "No," she said firmly, "I don't regret it. My life is more complicated now, more morally ambiguous, harder to define, but it's also more meaningful in ways I couldn't have imagined. I'm making a difference. Not just one patient at a time, but systemically, fundamentally, that matters. You've made a difference in my life too," Adrian said. "Reminded me that I'm more than my worst choices, that change is possible even when it seems impossible, that there's value in trying to be better even if you can never be perfect." Emily took his hand, interlacing their fingers. Somewhere along the way, their relationship had evolved from obligation to friendship, to something deeper. Partnership, maybe, or the kind of connection that transcended simple categories. "My mother saved you 20 years ago," Emily said, "and you've spent all this time trying to honor that. But Adrian, you don't owe her anymore. You don't owe me. If you're going to keep changing, keep trying to be better, it has to be because you want to, for yourself." "I know," Adrian said, "and it is. You and your mother. You showed me the path, but I'm the one choosing to walk it now. Not out of obligation, but because it's who I want to be." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker to life as evening deepened into night. Two people from completely different worlds who'd found common ground in the complicated space between right and wrong, justice and mercy, judgment and grace. Emily thought about her mother, wondered if Sarah was somehow watching, if she'd approve of the choices her daughter had made, choosing loyalty over law, trust over betrayal, complexity over simplicity, helping a criminal become something better rather than condemning him for what he'd been. It wasn't the life Emily had planned. It wasn't the simple story of the paramedic who saved lives and went home to a quiet apartment. It was messier, harder to explain, impossible to fit into neat categories of good and bad, but it was hers. And standing in the wreckage of her old life, Emily had built something new, something that honored her mother's memory, not by avoiding complications but by facing them with the same conviction that every life had value, every person deserved a chance, and that sometimes salvation came through the most unexpected paths. "Thank you," Emily said quietly, "for letting me be part of this, for trusting me, for becoming someone my mother would have been proud to know." "Thank you," Adrian replied, "for pulling me out of that burning car, and for pulling me out of the darkness I'd been living in for 20 years. You saved my life twice, Emily. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it." As the city stretched out before them, full of possibilities and second chances, Emily Carter and Adrian Blackwell sat together, two souls bound by fire and fate, by choice and circumstance, by the understanding that redemption was always possible for those brave enough to seek it. The price of salvation had been high: her simple life, her clear certainties, her uncomplicated sense of right and wrong. But what Emily had gained was worth infinitely more: purpose, partnership, and proof that her mother's belief in second chances had been right all along. Some rescues saved lives in the moment, others saved souls over time. Emily had done both, and in the process, had saved herself too.